Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Kim Millman. Today, I'm really excited to have Dr. Alan Christianson here with us to discuss his brand new book called The Adrenal Reset Diet. This book is really brilliant. I have had so many huge takeaways from the book for my patients, for my own life, and I'm so honored and proud to have him here with us. So welcome, Dr. Christensen.
Hey, Dr. Kim. Thank you so much for having me. I'm totally glad to be here with you.
You're welcome. So here's a little bit about Dr. Christensen. First of all, we have a community of colleagues who work in the natural health industry, and I can say a couple of things personally about Dr. Christensen. One is that he is regarded as our go-to person for thyroid because he's been specializing in it since what, like 1997 or so?
Pretty much, yeah. Actually, you were spot on. It's really got focused on it.
Yeah, so he's our go-to guy for thyroids. Now he's going to be our go-to guy for adrenals. And I'm so impressed with him as a clinician and as a person. He's so compassionate and caring, and that I've actually entrusted my mother's health to Dr. Christensen. So that's how highly regarded he is for me personally. And so I just want you to understand how really special Dr. Christensen is clinically and as a person. And let me just tell you a little bit about his credentials and qualifications. So he's a naturopathic medical doctor, and he's the founder and president of Integrative Health in Scottsdale, Arizona. And Integrative Health offers a fresh approach to living well by using a novel formula for science-based natural medicine. His team of physicians discovers the cause of each patient's troubling symptoms and protects their long-term health and quality of life. And that really is what it's all about, is protecting your quality of life. Dr. Christensen's primary focus is thyroid, adrenal, and hormone health, including weight gain, fatigue, and hair loss. Dr. Christensen is the co-author of The Complete Idiot's Guide to Thyroid, author of The Adrenal Reset Diet, and Healing Hashimoto's A Savvy Patient's Guide. Dr. Christensen founded Integrative Health in 1997. He resides in Scottsdale, Arizona with his wife, Karen, their 2 children, and his 6 unicycles. That's right, his 6 unicycles. Yeah, and I've actually seen videos of you on those unicycles. Dr. Christensen can be reached at www.myintegrativehealth.com and www.drchristiansen.com, and we'll post this actually underneath the video. So welcome.
Thanks again.
I want to start off with something in the first part of your book, which I really thought was so profound, and that I just love it when for people to really truly understand this. So I'm going to read a quote out of the Adrenal Reset Diet. Even though science tells us that obesity is no more caused by character than tuberculosis was, many still continue to blame the victim. Not only is this hurtful, but it also shifts the focus away from effective change. So can we explore this a little bit more about, I mean, I know that, I've struggled with weight my entire life, and it does feel like I'm a failure if I don't achieve the results that my friends achieve, or that, and I blame myself, and why couldn't I do it this time? And, and really, that is a really terrible thing for a person to be engaged in, right?
Yeah, it's a horrible thing to be saddled with. It's been a lifelong struggle of mine as well. And I mentioned in that same section about how 100 years ago we told people that were dying of tuberculosis that they were lazy, they had to get off their butts and move around, get fresh air, they had to change their diets. We even called it having a consumptive personality. We were so sure that it was a matter of moral character. And now that's laughable. But the science tells us that the same thing is the case for obesity. And tuberculosis, the science knew the solution a long time before there was really a widespread understanding of it. And thinking about weight struggles as being part of our body's stress response cycle, which we'll talk more about, you can see how being in a state of shame and blame and self-doubt is just not helpful. It's not right, and it's just not helpful.
That's so true. I hadn't even thought of it from a cortisol perspective or from a stress perspective. It just feeds that vicious cycle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's a really profound thing to start off with, because I truly believe that you're right, that it's not about our personality flaws, and it's not about our bad genetics, and it's not about that. It's just that we don't have the correct information yet, right? And I think that that's one of the things that your book is now going to open up, because what I've found is that I do pretty well for a short period of time, but that I'll have such a restrictive diet that my long-term diet, I have no idea where to go with it. I don't know how much protein I should have. I don't know how many carbs I should have. And I don't know how much fat I should have. I know that certain, diets and things work for me in the short term, but they don't work for me in the long term. Mm-hmm. And I think that are some huge, huge takeaways from your book, is that this is the way to potentially live your life, because you can now hone in on what are the right carbohydrates, how much carbohydrates should you be eating, and when you should be eating them. And it's life-changing, I really believe.
I think a big part of the stress also is just confusion about food, food being demonized. We think about bad foods and good foods. And let's think about that. How can they be bad or good? They're morally neutral.
That's right. That's such a good point. That's such a good point.
And within foods,
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, within foods, I think carbs have been like the biggest point of stress and confusion overall. Like, do we avoid them all? Do we have some? How much? What type? So I think just clarity is a real big part of the solution for people.
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you about carbs being the confusion point. I think that it used to be fats, and I think that I know that my community is more savvy around fats now, but I still think that even I struggle with carbs. I don't do well on a low carb diet. I certainly don't do well on a high carb diet.
Right.
I don't do well on a high protein diet. I really don't. There's a certain amount of protein, which it's there. I can feel just a heaviness in my body when I have too much protein and not enough carbs. So I'm actually going to be doing the reset diet myself. So you say that the Adrenal Reset Diet is different because it's not a low anything diet, which is great. And that food is the cure, not the enemy. Yeah. I mean, thank God for that. That makes people, that just makes you feel better already. And that carbs are not forbidden, but they're cycled. And then the circadian rhythms are fixed. So can we talk about the adrenal rhythm and how do people feel when their adrenal rhythms are disrupted?
Yeah, it's a big thing. Our weight management, our energy production, our brain health, they're all tied into daily rhythms. Yeah. And the conductor of the band, so to speak, of daily rhythms are the adrenal glands and their cortisol that they generate. So when that's in a good flow, you wake up pretty energized, you're eager to get going with your day, you're mentally alert, you're sharp. You actually enjoy exercise. You want to do things physical. You're not like forcing yourself to. You want to go out and move. And your body can control its weight quite naturally. You can maintain body weight on a variety of healthy foods. When that rhythm is off, none of those things are true. You're often struggling with your weight. Your energy might be very erratic. Your sleep may be poor. Your body's composition will really not seem to fit what you're doing. So many eat well and are active, but yet their body does not seem to reflect that. And that's how it works when the cycles are not right.
Yeah, and I know that I've actually been struggling over the last 6 months with exactly that. And I knew it was cortisol. I knew that, but I even don't now know how to fix it, except that I'm going to go on the Adrenal Reset Diet and do some cortisol tracings and see that my cortisol rhythm does come back. You made the point that fructose actually causes fat cells to convert the weak stress hormone cortisone to the strong stress hormone called cortisol. Yeah. And I didn't know that. And I think that that's something that people don't think about is we've, even as functional medicine doctors have really been taught about glycemic loads and, the effect of glucose, but there's not really a lot of information out there about fructose. So then I saw that you talk a lot about the fiber to fructose scores, which is just so brilliant. So can you talk a little bit about that, the fiber to fructose scores?
Along the journey towards getting carb clarity, I wanted to figure out, which parts of carbs are probably the healthiest and which parts are probably the worst. Yeah. And by looking at a ratio of those two things, you can get a sense on which ones are most conducive to your reset. So probably the most harmful part is fructose, and that's a type of sugar. It's one of the small monosaccharides, one of the single sugar molecules, and it works against your body the exact same way that being terrified does. So how your body feels when you're panicked is exactly what goes on chemically when you're eating more and more fructose. Now, fiber is the good part. Fiber stabilizes your blood sugar, it helps the intestinal flora work right, helps your immune system, just so many good things. So the more fiber we get from food and the less fructose we have to deal with in the process, that's proportionate to how healthy that food is, and that's the fiber-fructose ratio.
Well, I mean, so many times in the Adrenal Reset Diet, I read something and said, that was just described with such clarity, and you really make a lot of scientific concepts really easy for people to understand. And I think doing the fiber to fructose values is something where people, you say that anything over 4 is quite good, and those are the healthiest ones to have. Mm-hmm. And then under 4 are the ones that you should be limiting. That makes it super easy for people. You know, you just go over to page 52, and you have your, and I don't know, this is a galley copy, so you come over here to page 52, and here's my yellow line of where fructose becomes 4 or greater or less. And I just wanted to mention some of the ones that are actually under 4 that I eat a lot of. And so I was like, no wonder why I keep gaining weight, and I think that I'm doing a great job. Like, I would often have an apple in the morning. Like, that's, I'm not a big breakfast person, I know it's terrible, but I would have an apple in the morning, and then I would go to work out at Pilates. And that's not a good strategy, is it?
You know, there's a lot of benefit to having high amounts of fiber and high quality protein in the morning, and I think you'll see that be a very positive, easy shift for you.
Yeah, and you know, and I put blueberries in my smoothies all the time, and so that's something that I think that people can really quickly integrate into their life, and so that's something for people to make sure and pay attention to when they get the book and when they go through the book in detail. Can you talk a little bit about boiling potatoes and how that changes the starch? Because, I mean, I've heard for a long time, like, and let's talk about, does that mean russet versus waxies, or how do you do that? And talk to me about boiled potatoes.
So the concept behind that is a pretty neat thing called resistant fiber, aka resistant starch. You'll see both names. And better carbohydrates burn slowly and feed the flora. And there's a unique thing in carbs that causes them to be burned very, very gradually, even slower than what we get from common foods. And that's called this resistant fiber. So some foods contain that. You know, white beans have a fair amount. Navy, northern cannellinis. Also unripe bananas are quite rich in this. One source that's rather odd is potatoes. There's some tricks though. You know, raw potatoes actually have a lot, but they're not super digestible. So you want to cook them, but based on the temperature you cook them at, you can zap or damage more of the healthy resistant fiber. So boiling cooks them with the lowest temperature, so the most of the resistant fiber stays intact. Now, there's a second type of resistant fiber that forms by a process called regranulation. So when boiled potatoes are refrigerated, they end up building even more resistant fiber.
Wow.
So easy thing to have in the fridge. As far as type of potatoes, you know, not big differences type to type. Waxy are a little bit higher, you mentioned that. Waxy and white are a bit higher than others. Keep the skins on, you know, boil them up, cube them afterwards, throw them in the refrigerator. And after 6 hours of refrigeration, have them as they are. Maximal benefits occur without reheating them.
Okay. So, well, if you look at potatoes, the glycemic index of russet potatoes is almost like sugar. It's like 95, right? And then
that's totally different based on how they're prepared.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about baked, for sure, baked or potato chips, boiled though is quite different.
So I did not know this at all. I mean, that's going to be, I think that for people who like potatoes, who have stayed away from them because they are considered, you know, to be the bad carb, that's going to be a source of enjoyment in people's diets, right?
One point I should mention too, there is talk about avoiding nightshade plants, and there certainly are some who are sensitive to them. The dangerous part about nightshade plants is this green compound called solanaceae. And for sure, you would not want to eat the sprouts of potatoes or the green skin of potatoes, but potatoes without green skin and without sprouts, they don't have solanaceae. They're actually free of that nightshade toxin.
Oh, that's fantastic. That was actually going to be my next question about that. That's fantastic, because a lot of people who are nightshade intolerant could have sweet potatoes because they're not in the nightshade family. But it's great to know that, that you just need to stay away from the green parts of the potatoes.
You know, tomatoes are a great similar example. So tomatoes, if you ate the leaves of those, many tomato leaves, they'd be poisonous. But that same compound that's in the leaves, there's none of it whatsoever in the fruit when the fruit is ripened. So yeah, it's totally, and there's many examples of plants to where some parts are safe, some parts are not, and this is just a great example of that.
Well, what exactly are we reacting to then in the nightshade family? Because I don't think that many people are eating the green parts of tomatoes, but...
No. There's an alkaloid called solanaceae, and it's a compound that's poisonous to all people at high enough amounts, but some are sensitive to it at lower thresholds than others. So there are some foods, for example, like the Western eggplants that have the green beneath the skin, to where you do get some of that when you ingest the skin portion.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And then chili peppers. Since chili peppers are often green, do they contain a lot of the solanaceae?
They do not.
They do not.
No.
And what about like green bell peppers?
So this is a funny distinction. So the green bell peppers are the less ripe versions of the fruit. And they do contain some solanaceae. Small amounts are not poisonous, but some who are sensitive may notice that being an issue. Not a factor for the red or the yellow bell peppers.
Wow, that's just some really great clinical pearls there.
I hate it. People get scared of food. There's enough things to be concerned about nowadays. And I think that in our circles, we get some attention when we draw out a danger. Like, oh, here's this dangerous thing you didn't know about. And I'm afraid that it's gone so far now that people feel like there's no safe options at all. Any food you can think of, there's some plausible danger. But no, nightshades are fine in those contexts.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. I hear that from my patients, in fact. They don't know what to eat. They actually think they can't eat anything.
Yeah.
So you're saying that in the Adrenal Reset Diet, that 75 to 90 grams of carbs works best for most people.
Mm-hmm.
That if you go lower than that, you tend to have too few carbs, and then your cortisol spikes up.
Yeah.
And then if you have really processed carbohydrates, the same thing's going to happen because your blood sugar goes high, then it goes low, and when it goes low, your cortisol spikes up.
Yeah, there's no good dose of Twinkies.
No.
And that's 75 to 90 grams for sure. There's people that are bigger than others. We've got different genders. We've got different levels of activity.
Mm-hmm.
But for most adults on a typical type of exercise routine and physical activity in the modern world, that's a good range to work within.
And you would think that if a person is doing a lot of strenuous exercise, they might be on the upper end of that. If they have a more muscular physique, they're going to be on the upper end of that.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. And so you're saying that, and the other thing that I like about the Adrenal Reset Diet is that it's not protein crazy either. So you're saying that a piece of protein should really be kind of the size of your fist, right?
Size of your palm, you're right. Yeah, you want some of that for your meals, for stabilizing blood sugar, but like all things, it's always a matter of balance. It's not that protein is good or bad or carbs are good or bad. It's all about ratios and amounts. They're all parts of our diet. We need them all, but it's just about how much relative to the other parts. And then also what timing.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit about the timing of, tell us why the insulin's, I don't know if you know why, but talk about how insulin sensitivity of the muscles increases as the day goes on, and then how does the Adrenal Reset Diet work with that?
Kind of a neat thing. The way we respond to food is different per time of day. Many argue that much of our evolutionary past, that we had most of our food in the evening. We would spend our days being physically active and gathering and hunting, and the consistent time to have one larger meal would have been after that was done. We build a campfire and gather together and have a larger community meal. And we're pretty hardwired to respond more favorably to food later in the day than we are earlier in the day. So it's not about really burning, it's more about how we use it. So the food that we have later in the day, we build this magic thing out of called glycogen. And that's by far our most effective fuel. The food we get earlier in the day, we either have to burn it more so as sugar or we have to burn it as fat. And those two get stored pretty easily. So there's a rhythm that goes on. And the idea with the diet is you're just using that rhythm to your advantage. You're consuming the right foods in the right time so you can gain energy and stay lean from them.
And wouldn't you also say that in the hunter-gatherer's lifestyle, pretty much they weren't eating snacks at 9 o'clock at night as well, right? So they're not eating.
Not likely.
Yeah, I mean, they have the one, they're out gathering the food and making food during the day and eating a nice meal at night, and pretty much, yeah.
And that's a great distinction to draw out, because certainly a pitfall towards the idea of healthy carbs at night, a pitfall could be a bag of chips on the couch in front of the TV as you're trying to wind down.
Exactly.
That would not be conducive to your health.
So from the Adrenal Reset Diet, I know that your blood sugar is going to spike up, but then it's going to spike down, and now your cortisol is going to rise at exactly the time where you want your cortisol to be the lowest, which is going to cause insomnia, right?
Yep.
And people who have problems where they feel really tired in the morning and really wired at night, isn't it that their cortisol rhythm is pretty much switched?
It's a common issue. You're exactly right. What's happening in our bodies when we should be waking up and getting alert can be happening when we're trying to go to sleep. So it's great to fix that. Yeah, and we've shown that as simple as diet can do that.
It's not good to be running from a tiger in the middle of the night, is it?
For sure not. Sleep is so important.
And here's a really good point from a clinician's point of view, is that I have actually been looking at people's cortisol rhythms for probably 5 to 10 years now, and there are a certain group of people who, with all the right herbs and using herbs that raise cortisol at the right time and using herbs that dampen cortisol at the right time, I can't fix their rhythm. And after reading your diet, your book, I'm convinced now that it's carb cycling for them. I'm convinced. So I think this is just, I think it's really brilliant. I know I just keep saying that over and over again, but I really do firmly believe that.
Well, I was excited about the clinical trial that we talked about in the book. I was able to show that by doing just the diet alone, not doing other things, yeah, you could fix that adrenal rhythm, and you could fix it very quickly, in a matter of just a month.
Yeah, and you saw significant weight gain in the people, or a significant weight loss in those people, right?
We did, and most excitedly, we saw significant waist loss. That's a little distinction I like to make, but yeah, some saw 3, 4, 5 inches come off over the course of that month. The average was at least 2.5, so it was great.
So the thought is that the belly fat is in my practice, when I see belly fat, it's more of an adrenal disruptor and a cortisol signal. And so you're directly affecting cortisol, seeing the waistline go down. Yeah. And we know that a lot of the waist fat could be visceral fat, which is fat around your organs, and that is the most metabolically active and the most damaging, and the fat that's most related to cardiovascular problems. So if you are doing a good job of decreasing visceral fat, you're making your heart healthier, your quality of life for the rest of your life, and probably extending your lifespan as well.
For sure.
Yeah, so important. It really is so important. So one of the things that I found too is your shakes have a little bit of carbohydrate in them, and I've never seen this before, and I think it's really quite cool. Your shakes will have like a quarter cup of beans or a quarter cup of oatmeal. So when people put the oatmeal into their shakes, how does that work?
The idea there is getting that resistant fiber again.
But pragmatically, how do they do it? Do they cook the oatmeal first, or?
You want uncooked rolled oats, to be precise.
Uncooked rolled oats.
As far as being effective.
And how does that taste?
No real taste effect. Both the beans and the oats really do not affect the taste. They do have a very positive effect upon the texture. They make your shake or smoothie very rich and very creamy. And this works much better with a blender as opposed to a hand shaker, but get a real nice texture and no negative taste effect.
And so I find that when I do shakes, because I'm very protein sensitive, I can't do 2 scoops of protein powder in my shake. I can only do 1. And really, if I have that at 8 o'clock, by 10 o'clock, I'm hungry. Mm-hmm. It doesn't hold me till noon. So I'm really excited to add in a little bit of slow burning carbohydrates to see if that doesn't make a huge difference.
Here's exactly how I do that. Yeah. So get some old-fashioned oats. And oats, you do want to get ones like Bob's Red Mill. I'm not tied to them. I do like the products. Yeah. But many oats are processed in machines that also have wheat contaminants. So you want gluten-free oats. Get the old-fashioned ones and just blend them in really good. The other great option is navy beans. Get organic canned ones that have no weird ingredients, just navy beans and salt. Give them a nice rinse under the water in the sink a few times, and just use a quarter cup. Take the remaining beans, put them back in the can, and the better organic ones are going to be BPA-free cans as well. So put them back in the can, add some water, put the lid back on, throw it in the refrigerator, and use some for the next day. And you can get about 3 days out of those, but they're still fine. So yeah, they work real well like that.
You could probably even freeze a bit of them and put and get a little bit more life out of them.
You sure could, yeah.
So then, kind of tying up then the rest of the book is really trying to categorize where you stand right now in 3 different categories of either being stressed and, is it wired and tired?
Yep, you got it.
Stressed, wired and tired, or crashed.
Yep.
And so there are really fascinating chapters in the back of the book to find out where you are. And then there's an eating plan that's actually tied to that state, as well as an exercise plan, as well as a stress reduction plan, and it's so nicely done. So I think everyone can really get quite a lot of value out of this book, and I really believe that it doesn't even matter if you are on paleo and doing well. There's so many nuances to this book where you can take what you know about healthy living to the next level. I just really believe that. And so, in wrapping up, I know that you've got some new some recipes and a small cookbook to give out. And so, why don't you tell people about what can they get from going to your site?
I want everyone to be able to have an understanding of where their health is and how they can always improve that and how they can reset their own adrenals. So I made a free cookbook which has 67 really good recipes that we use at home all the time, and my kids love them, and and they're free for you just to check out. We made hard copies for those who prefer, and we've got some cooking DVDs we put out as well. So just great stuff that someone can get their feet into and know how this works out, and work it within their own lives?
Yeah, I'm always looking for new recipes. It makes your life so much fuller to have good food and to really have good recipes from someone like you who is just going to put all this together so that it's super easy. You just follow the recipes and follow the book, and there's extra support as well that you're putting together for people so they can look and find out whether that's right for them as well. And so I'm going to have a link that will be at the bottom of this video, and I really encourage you to go over to Dr. Christensen's site and find out what he's offering can help you. And I couldn't recommend this book any more highly than I do. It's really fabulous, and I don't care what your level is, you will learn something by reading this book.
You know, I had fun. One of the chapters I wrote was called the chapter about thriving. And if things all work well, it's still good to be educated because you want to keep it that way. So you're right. It's always good to learn a little more and keep your edge in place.
Yeah, I think wherever you are, there are things in here. And I even if you're a practitioner, read this book because it's innovative, it's fresh. You won't have heard this information before because it really stems out of 75,000 of your patient visits, right? And your own unique way of looking at things and the continuous blood glucose monitoring that you did and tying that in with cortisol and it's really brilliant. So thank you for this book, and thank you for doing what you do, Dr. Christensen.
Thanks again for having me, Dr. Kim. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, so goodbye.